Welcome back to Left Coast News. We're talking about another slate of bills that you're not going to want to hear about, but need to know about. So let's be very clear right up front. This isn't compassion, this isn't justice, and this sure as hell isn't public safety. What we're watching in Olympia right now is a coordinated push to weaken accountability, rewrite sentencing, and normalize releasing criminals back into communities, all while victims, law enforcement, and taxpayers are told to just deal with it. Tonight we're breaking down a stack of bills that all move in the same direction: less punishment, more excuses, more criminals back on the street. And if you're a conservative, or frankly anyone who believes in consequences, rule of law, or protecting families, these bills should scare you.
Thanks for tuning in to leftcoastnews.net. News and information from the wacky, sometimes communist, liberal west coast of the United States. For more, visit leftcoastnews.net.
All right, first up, SB 5945, gutting the three strikes law. Let's start with the nuclear option. SB 5945 rewrites Washington's voter-approved three strikes law, not prospectively, retroactively. This bill removes strike offenses committed under age 18, even when those crimes were violent felonies tried in adult court, and forces resentencing hearings for inmates currently serving life sentences. Let that sink in. These weren't kids stealing candy bars. These were rape, assault, kidnapping, and violent felony convictions, serious enough to count as strikes. The people pushing this bill want to pretend that violent behavior magically disappears with age. And here's the kicker. This law was approved by voters. Olympia didn't like the outcome, so now they're undoing it. Heard that one before? That's not reform, that's legislative defiance of the voters. Next up is HB 2403, weakening sex offender accountability. HB 2403, which quietly downgrades penalties for failure to register as a sex offender. Under this bill, repeated failures to register no longer escalate to a Class B felony. Second or subsequent failures are no longer considered sex offenses. Community custody requirements are weakened. Failure to register isn't a paperwork mistake. It's how law enforcement knows where sex offenders are living. Reducing penalties here doesn't protect offenders, it endangers communities. This bill prioritizes offender convenience over public safety, period. SB 5873, expanding escorted leave for inmates. Let's talk about SB 5873, which expands escorted leave of absences for incarcerated individuals. This bill broadens who counts as family, allows escorted leave not just for funerals, but for mentorship and reentry programs, and normalizes inmate movement outside secure facilities. Every time an inmate leaves custody, risks increase. The answer to reentry is accountability and supervision, not field trips dressed up as rehabilitation. If reentry programs matter that much, build them inside the fence. SB 5895, medical release expansion. SB 5895 expands extraordinary medical placement, allowing the Department of Corrections to release inmates if it decides their medical needs can't be met inside the prison. The definition of basic medical care is expanded, discretion is widened, and transparency is reduced. This shifts the burden of incarceration from the state onto local communities where politicians claim cost savings. Public safety is not a budget line item. HB 1591, sentencing discounts and record vacating. HB 1591 creates a new sentencing alternative for defendants who claim prior victimization. Yes, the defendants are the victims in this state. It allows reduced sentences, waived mandatory minimums, and in some cases, the complete vacating of criminal convictions. No one disputes that victims deserve support, but this bill allows courts to erase convictions for serious crimes based on subjective determinations. Victims of crime don't get do-overs. Justice cannot function if accountability depends on sympathy instead of facts. SB 6051, waiver government, rules for you, exceptions for them. Now let's pivot to SB 6051 because this bill reveals the philosophy behind all the others. SB 6051 allows school districts to waive large sections of state law and administrative rules, keep the savings, and even reward staff financially for finding ways around compliance, up to $10,000 in fact. This creates a two-tier system. Regular citizens must follow the law, and government institutions can waive it. Once you normalize rule by exception governance, criminal justice follows. When laws become optional, accountability collapses. SB 5860, paying themselves more while cutting consequences. Next is SB 5860, which nearly triples school board pay, adds child care reimbursements, and indexes compensation increases to cost of living adjustments. While victims lose justice, police lose authority, and criminals get resentenced, government officials quietly vote themselves more money. The same legislature claiming it can't afford incarceration somehow finds ways to pay for itself. HB 2364, poverty bureaucracy, not poverty solutions. HB 2364 expands and renames a legislative executive task force, one of the hundreds of task forces this state has. They love their task forces. Renames it into the Economic Justice and Well-Being Task Force. It adds agencies, expands membership, builds a 10-year plan, and creates new advisory councils. You don't dismantle poverty by creating committees. And you don't reduce crime by teaching the state that outcomes are never personal responsibility, they're always systematic failures. That ideology bleeds directly into criminal justice. HB 2373, energy redistribution by force. Finally, HB 2373 mandates utility bill discounts and restructures energy pricing under state control. This matters because it reveals the same governing instinct. Mandate redistribution, shift costs quietly, call it equity, ignore consequences. Higher costs, increased instability. Instability fuels crime. You don't get safer communities by making life harder for working families. When you look at all these bills together, the pattern is unmistakable. 3 strikes dismantled, sex offender penalties weakened, prisoners released and moved, sentences reduced and erased, laws waived by institutions, bureaucrats paid more, committees expanded, costs shifted to taxpayers. This isn't random. It's ideological governance, one that excuses crime, expands government, and punishes responsibility. Washington isn't becoming safer. It's becoming more permissive, more expensive, and less accountable. These bills don't protect victims. They don't empower police. They don't respect voters. They protect systems and the people running them. If you believe in law and order, this is your warning shot. This is Left Coast News, and this is what soft on crime looks like when it's written into law.